It is September, and last September I was looking for prompts for Sci Fi September. Sci Fi September is a readathon that happens every September. 2 years ago, I think it was put on by Books Are My Social Life. I don't know who put it on before then. I don't know who invented it. But every year that I've been on BookTube, I have participated in some way in Sci Fi September. And last year, I made a list of prompts because I couldn't find anyone else doing prompts for Sci Fi September. I based my prompts on the planets of our solar system. I made a prompt for each one, and this was a way to find books to read for Sci Fi September. They were very easy prompts, just a inspiration or a way to help you pick from your TBR so that you could pick books for Sci Fi September. Very easy, very simple. In 2022, I didn't use those prompts. I just created them and then read sci-fi books as I saw fit. This year, I decided I wanted to use the prompts that I created last year to do a vlog for Sci Fi September, so I am currently making that vlog. But I also thought that these prompts would be perfect for a tag. So I am using the prompts that I created in 2022 to make the Sci Fi September Planetary tag. That is the tag that you're going to see now. The prompts are all based on planets, and the first prompt is Mercury, a short sci-fi book, novella, or short story. This is perfect for Shorty September. I know that there are lots and lots of readathons, including Space Opera September, including Straya September, including Shorty September, that happen in the month of September. So definitely feel free to double up books for this tag and for anything else that you're doing. And of course, you can double up books within the tag. My first book for Mercury, a short sci-fi book, is going to be Annihilation. I read this last year in 2022 and I loved it. I fell in love with Jeff Vandermeer's writing. I fell in love with the Southern Reach trilogy. I ended up finishing that trilogy this year in 2023. Annihilation is still my favorite. This follows a group of scientists who are going into the mysterious, enigmatic Area X. So Area X is an area of coastline that has been taken over by plant life and flora and fauna, and the scientists are going in to explore. They're the 12th expedition that has gone in, and we follow the biologist as she writes in her journal about this expedition. It is definitely sci-fi, lots of science aspects, but also it is horror. It's thrilling, it's exciting, it's unsettling, not entirely satisfactory in its ending. So this is exactly the kind of sci-fi that I love. I love being immersed in a world and a feeling, and Annihilation definitely does that. Prompt number 2 is Venus, a sci-fi romance or a book about twins, and I picked 2. So my sci-fi romance is A Princess of Mars by Edgar Rice Burroughs. This was written in the early 1900s, and it was at first serialized, but The Princess of Mars is the first book of a long series of books about John Carter of Mars. John Carter is kind of a free agent traveling around the Americas when he gets into a spot of trouble and is trapped in a cave by his enemies. He undergoes some sort of kind of out-of-body experience and somehow ends up on the planet Mars. He has to learn the culture and the nature of Mars. He has to figure out how to do everything. And of course, there are forces of good and forces of evil on Mars. He ends up making friends and becoming kind of a champion for certain factions. One of the people, one of the Martians, one of the aliens that he meets is Deja Thoris, and all the rest of the books kind of go on to talk about their romance and their love affair to a certain extent. Deja Thoris is a princess of Mars, and of course she needs rescuing and help from the dashing earthling, John Carter. The other book that I picked for this prompt is The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. This is a alternate dimension travel sci-fi book where it is well known that there's many different versions of Earth, and you can travel to all these different versions of the planet as long as you are not alive on those planets. So if your counterpart on another planet, in another timeline, in another dimension is dead, you can travel there. But if not, something catastrophic happens and you could die. Our main character is someone who's dead on almost every other version of Earth, and she is able to hop around, and she becomes kind of like a bounty hunter slash treasure hunter for various people on her Earth. The twins aspect is not truly a twins aspect, but it does come into play when somehow she is able to stay on a world with her doppelganger. This also has a love story in it, but I would not call it a romance. The next prompt is Earth, a sci-fi comfort read, and it wouldn't be a tag on this channel if I didn't talk about The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So Douglas Adams is my all-time favorite author. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is my all-time favorite book. It's definitely a comfort read to me. It's something that I listen to fall asleep at night. It's something that I love, and I love all of Douglas Adams' books, but definitely The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency, the first in the Dirk Gently series, are my favorites. If you don't know what The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is about, it follows Arthur Dent, who wakes up one morning very disturbed to find out that his house is being demolished. Even more unexpectedly, his friend Ford shows up and says that they have to flee Earth because the whole planet is actually being demolished. And then The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy follows their adventures through a 5-book trilogy. It's very funny, very humorous, a little bit dated nowadays, but definitely worth a read if you haven't tried it before, and extremely comforting. The next prompt is Mars, a sci-fi book with red on the cover or featuring Mars or Martians. So I went with The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. This is a sci-fi about Martians invading Earth, so it takes place all on Earth, and it's a really quick read, probably 150 pages. It is just a very classic and prototypical version of the invasion story. I haven't read War of the Worlds in many years, but it's something that I'm thinking about revisiting. The prompt for Jupiter is a sci-fi horror book, and for this I went with one of my all-time favorite books, The Island of Dr. Moreau, also by H.G. Wells, and this is about a young man who is on a ship. He's shipwrecked, and a very strange man, Montgomery, rescues him and brings him to the island where he works with Dr. Moreau. Our main character is so relieved to be rescued from sea where he was inevitably going to die that he at first doesn't notice how strange this island actually is. This is definitely a sci-fi horror. It has a lot of thrilling elements. It has a lot of chasing elements, being confined, not being able to trust your rescuers slash captors. Obviously there's a huge scientific element in this. There's some thrilling moments. There's some monster scares, and I just love this book. I think it's so exciting and fantastic, and it is definitely horrific. It's scary. You could also count Annihilation for a sci-fi horror because Annihilation is definitely also very disturbing and scary. Saturn is our next prompt and our next planet, and that is a sci-fi that's part of a series or a sci-fi that's set in space. And for this I chose one that's both. I chose Ringworld by Larry Niven. This is one of my all-time favorite sci-fi books. I've read it several times, and it follows Louis Wu, who is getting older and he's looking for adventure when a mysterious alien from a race he didn't really think existed offers him a job to seek out the Ringworld. So Louis Wu, his new mysterious host Nessus, and a group of other people, including a large cat alien and a very lucky girl, seek out the Ringworld. Once they get to the Ringworld, there are a lot of complications that they weren't expecting, and many different aspects of Nessus's plan come into light. I love this book. It's so easy to read, exciting. Louis Wu is a very casual, interesting, everyman character, but with so much knowledge from his years of being alive and having various adventures. And then we meet all these other characters that are flawed, but definitely offer something to the story, and you become very close with. This is the first in a series, and it goes on to expand to a whole web of series where we're following Nessus, we're following Louis Wu, where we're following, I think, Louis Wu's children at some point, where we're following Speaker for Animals' whole tribe, the cat people, and it is a long-running series that was written by Larry Niven and later his children. The next prompt is Uranus, a sci-fi book out of your comfort zone, and for this I'm going to recommend Starship Troopers by Robert A. Heinlein. I read this a few years ago, and it's definitely out of my comfort zone because it's all about war, and it's all about engaging in war, the idea of war, the morality of war. War books are not usually my thing. I don't usually like them. This was also my first Robert A. Heinlein, but I really loved this book. I read it on audio, which I definitely highly recommend. It's super quick to get through. This follows a soldier in the war, how he got into the war, what made him get into the war, and then what the war is about, who they're fighting against, with so many implications of the morality of war, the idea of war. I think this book is squarely anti-war, but some people feel otherwise. I would love to know if you've read Starship Troopers. What are your thoughts? Neptune is our next planet and our next prompt, and this is a water-themed sci-fi. And I didn't actually have like a water-themed sci-fi that I could recommend. I don't think I've ever read a book that was like set on a water world, taking place within the water, but I picked two books that water plays a large part in the books. The first of which is Cat's Cradle by Kurt Vonnegut. This is one of my all-time favorite sci-fi books. I haven't read it in a long time though, and I keep thinking I should reread it. Maybe I will reread it for this Sci Fi September. This book follows a reporter who is investigating the descendants of Oppenheimer. So it is very topical, relevant right now if you just watch the Oppenheimer movie. It follows that family and a secret that they're keeping from their relative Oppenheimer, something else destructive that he created. We see from the reporter's perspective, and we learn about this family, and we learn about the secret that they're holding. Water plays a part in this. If you've read it, you know. If not, I definitely suggest picking this one up. This is my favorite of all the Vonnegut's that I've read, although I like a lot of his books. Again, I haven't read them in many years, so maybe it's time for a reread. Another water-related book is Dune by Frank Herbert, another book with a movie tie-in, but this one is a direct adaptation of this book. Dune follows a young man, Paul, who is the son of a duke, as his father needs to move to the planet Arrakis, or Dune, where the spice is mined, which is a special element that people use in everyday life, but also use for intergalactic travel. Paul and his family move from a lush, wonderful water-filled planet to Dune, where water is a extreme commodity. Even when you die, the water from your body is extracted and distributed to your tribe so that no water goes to waste. This follows Paul, his mother Jessica, and all the politics that go into controlling this planet Dune and controlling the spice. There are many different political factions that are vying to get to Dune, to own Dune, to control Dune, but there's also a whole indigenous populace that lives on Dune, and Paul has to decide where his loyalties lay. So not water-based sci-fi, but definitely water-related sci-fi. The bonus question, our last question, is the sun. It's not a planet, but it is a requirement for all planets to exist, and this is a classic sci-fi author or book. And for this, I'm going with Philip Jose Farmer, his book Day World. Day World is all about a super future time in the United States and all over the world where the overpopulation has become so extreme that people can only live one day a week. So you might be a Monday person and you wake up on Monday morning, you have your entire Monday, you live your regular life, go to your job, do everything, and then Monday night you go to sleep and you sleep for the entire week until the following Monday. You might be a Tuesday person, you might be a Wednesday person, or like the main character of this book, you might be a daybreaker, someone who's able to move covertly throughout all the days. So our main character lives every day of the week. This follows his life and how he's able to daybreak and why he's daybreaking and what the consequences of that are, especially in a time where the government is monitoring you every second. This is a really interesting one. Again, it's a little bit dated in its like technology, but the ideas here I think are very current and relevant, so I definitely highly recommend it. Philip Jose Farmer was a super interesting writer too. He wrote a lot of different varied things, and he knew a lot of writers, and he had fallings out with many of the writers that he knew. I think he's definitely a classic sci-fi author worth reading something of his canon. Those were the prompts and my recommendations for the Sci Fi September planetary tag. I would love to tag some people in this tag. This would be my second original tag. I don't usually tag people when I do other people's tags because mostly people have done them, but since this one is brand new, I would like to tag a few. The big channels that I would like to tag are Booked and Busy, who is a really big channel. She reads sci-fi. She reads like long epic sci-fi and fantasy. She really loves to get into series. She's known for like binging series, so I think she would have some really interesting answers to this one. Next, I would like to tag Tori Morrow, who is another super heavy sci-fi reader, but she reads varied sci-fi. She does read series, she does read longer books, but she does read some classics and indie work. She is a great channel, very soothing, very comforting. I love when she puts out videos. I would like to tag Bookends and Biscuits. She's another sci-fi reader. I love her thumbnails. They're always so cool. She reads a lot of very different sci-fi, and again, she has a very comforting, calming YouTube channel, so it's so fun to hear her talk about otherworldly sci-fi elements in her calm and relaxed manner. I would also like to tag Criminali. I know that he reads horror, pulp, and that kind of thing, but he also does read a fair amount of sci-fi, and I think he'd have an interesting take on this tag. I would also like to tag Read by Fred. He reads sci-fi, but he also reads a lot of like science, so I think that he could add a more nonfiction bent to this tag if he wanted to, or he could go straight sci-fi. He recently participated in Book Trek 2023, so maybe he would put some Star Trek related books in this tag if he decides to do it. There's so many other people that I would like to tag, but I don't want this video to be too long, so I'm going to list them in the description box below. Make sure to go check out their channels and the channels that I've already tagged, because they're all really awesome sci-fi readers. And if you are a sci-fi reader, or if you are just interested in this tag, I tag you viewing at home as well. Feel free to do this tag, and if you do, definitely let me know in the comments below that you've done it so I can check out your video. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!